Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to the Lenten devotions titled Lent Forever. I heard of a story about a man who was bitten by a dog and was later discovered to be rabid. Hospital tests confirmed this. This man had contracted rabies. This was a time when there was nothing much to be done after rabies had set in. No cure had been developed. The doctor had the bleak assignment of bringing the bad news to his patient. He told the patient, "Dear sir, everything possible will be done to make you comfortable, but we can't offer any false hope. My best advice to you is that you make your affairs in order as soon as possible." The dying man sank back in depression and shock, but finally he rallied through strength to ask for a pen and paper. He began writing furiously. An hour later, when the doctor returned, the man's pen was still flowing. The doctor said, "Well, it's good to see that you have taken my advice. I think you are working on your will." The man replied, "Doctor, this is no will. It is a list of people I plan on biting before I die." Have you ever felt like this man in the story? Well, I believe we all have many times. We have been bitter towards our boss when he or she fired us, towards our parents when they scolded us, towards our church when it ignored us, towards friends who forgot us, towards elders who humiliated us. Surely, of all human emotions, bitterness is one that should be feared the most. It's been said that bitterness is a cruel cancer that will devour you from the inside out. In Hebrews chapter 12 verse 15 it says, "See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled." The writer of the letter of Hebrews acknowledges this problem when he speaks of any root of bitterness. The idea here is that of a root of a plant just beneath the surface of the ground. It is unseen, it is unnoticed, it is undetected, but nevertheless, it is there and it is lethal. The root of bitterness requires very little soil, needs very little cultivation, and it is very swift to grow but very tough to remove. As I said, the root of bitterness is underground. Seldom will you find anyone who will admit that they are a bitter person. They will either deny it or disguise it. Let me ask you, are you a bitter person? Well, to know about it, just ask these questions to yourself. Are you hypersensitive? Are you ungrateful? Are you insincere? Do you hold grudges? Do you have mood swings? Well, the answer to the above questions, if it is yes, then yes, we are bitter people. Bitterness will affect you physically, emotionally, and spiritually because the fruit of bitterness is an acid that destroys its container. Now we need to understand that as a root, it grows in two directions. This bitterness, it grows in you. Hebrews 12:15 it says, "No root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble." A root grows downward, digging deeper and latching on to anything it can find to gain stability. Not only it grows in you, it also grows towards others. Hebrews 12:15. By it many become defiled. We stain other lives by our bitterness. It is like a contagious disease. It spreads. Let's have a quick look what bitterness does from a character in the Bible. Have you ever heard or read about the name Ahithophel? Well, he was David's counselor. In 2 Samuel 15 verse 12, we see that. When he spoke, others sat and listened. But something happened in Ahithophel's life that left a great hurt in his soul. And he met a tragic end because he allowed a great hurt to flourish in his life. What was the thing that distressed him? When we look at 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 3, we find Bathsheba was Ahithophel's granddaughter. He certainly might have been proud about Bathsheba being married to Uriah and how it must have grieved him when he heard that Uriah, her husband, had been killed in battle. Can you imagine Ahithophel, or can you see Ahithophel standing by Bathsheba's side with his arm around her as they stand at the grave of Uriah, her husband? But not many days later, the news breaks of David's adulterous affair with Bathsheba. Who do you think he blames? Yes, he blames David. It was David who had seduced her. It was David who had planned and plotted Uriah's death. It was King David who had brought a scar upon the family name. And when David's son Absalom rebelled against his father, Ahithophel saw his chance to get even. Out of his hatred for David, Ahithophel gave Absalom 2 words of counsel. The first was designed to disgrace the king. 2 Samuel chapter 16 verse 20 to 23. The second was designed to destroy the king. 2 Samuel 17 words 1 to 4. The man, just look at it. The man who had helped David for so many years, Ahithophel, is now seeking to hurt that same person. Dear friends, do you find yourself in this character of Ahithophel? Is there any friend or believer who for years you have helped them, counseled them, encouraged them, and then all of a sudden something unthinkable happened? They wronged you, and since that moment that hurt has gone on increasing and bitterness is the result? My dear friends, I believe no one can ever say that from henceforth others will not hurt you, others will not offend you, others will not disappoint you. However, remember one thing, and this is for sure, that when you are hurt and you do not deal with it, it will consume and dominate your life. Incidentally, do you know how Ahithophel finished his days? When his counsel was rejected, he went to his house and committed suicide. 2 Samuel 17 verse 23. You see, what is the message that he is conveying? If David could not die, he could not live. Dear friends, do you realize that bitterness will destroy you? We all know about rattlesnake, right? If cornered, it's been told that sometimes it becomes so angry that it will bite itself. Is this not what the harboring of hate and resentment is? It is a biting of oneself. We think we are harming others in holding these hates, but the deeper harm is to ourselves. Bitterness is the biting of oneself. Dear friends, you and me, we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control what happens in us. You and I, we cannot control how others act towards us, but you and I, we can control how we react towards others. Bitterness is never legitimate. No matter what someone has done to you, how bad or how often, bitterness is a wrong response and will never be acceptable to God. Dear friends, I want you to ask yourself these questions. Is there anyone that I have bitterness toward? Is there any anger deep down inside that I have never dealt with? Is the poison of it seeping into every facet of my life? Can you join in this prayer along with me? Heavenly Father, you know I am troubled by thoughts and feelings of bitterness. You also know why, and you know how deep the hurt goes and how long I have lived with it. But I don't want to live with it any longer. I don't want to be a bitter person, Lord. With your help, I let go of my bitterness. May I never ever fall short of your grace. And may I never allow bitterness to ever germinate in my life. Empty me of bitterness and instead fill me with your joy and gladness. Help me, O Lord, to keep letting go and release these toxic emotions as often as they try to return. Amen.